When we watch our sporting heroes play out dramatic victories or agonizing losses, the achievements, near misses, contests, and spectacles can be so dramatic that we often forget that sport was created and evolved to fulfill specific functions in society at that time. While we see competition, drama, heartache, and victory, people before us saw an opportunity to help people, bring people together, or solve a particular problem in society. The Canadian invented sports, lacrosse, basketball, five-pin bowling, ringette, and wheelchair rugby all exemplify those social functions. Among these sports, lacrosse has the richest history because it developed as an Aboriginal game that was played out as a ritual rather than as a competition. With over 40 variations, Bagataway, or Tawarathon, meaning Little Brother of War, was played out over a few days to honor a fallen warrior, nurse a sick person back to health, or even to train for hunting or war. French missionaries named the game lacrosse because the stick used to pass the ball resembled a French bishop's staff. But more significant changes to the game occurred because of the nationalism that surrounded Confederation. In the spring of 1867, as well as Aboriginal populations, lacrosse was played only by the social elites in Canada's major cities. One prominent Montreal dentist, Dr. George William Beers, actively campaigned to make lacrosse the national sport that could be showcased to Great Britain under the banner, "Our Country and Our Game." With new rules, a new association, and more competitive games that were all surrounded by a national aura, lacrosse literally took off, and by the fall of 1867, there were 10 lacrosse clubs in Canada with over 2,000 members. While lacrosse brought Canadian people together, basketball was invented to solve a social problem, namely the perceived moral dangers and hardships of the newly forming cities in the 19th century. At this time, there was a growing recognition that competitive sport could keep young men fit and healthy, whilst also teaching a host of desirable moral values. The YMCA, Young Men's Christian Association, was one social institution that championed the dual cause of physical health through moral development, or healthy body, mind, and spirit. In 1891, one of the physical educators at the YMCA training school in Springfield, Massachusetts, was the Canadian James Naismith, who was also a chaplain. Naismith was asked to create an indoor competitive game that would occupy the young men at the school in the harsh winter months when they could no longer play football. Although it may not look like it today, the virtuous and religious background of the school made Naismith design a game that deliberately avoided the aggressiveness of football. Therefore, he ensured the game's flow be based on passing, and he placed peach baskets that were to act as goals in places that were difficult to guard, on the railings, high above the gym floor. It was more important to Naismith that the game adhered to moral values than sheer competitiveness. Innovation, creativity, curiosity, adaptability, collaboration, community, and inclusiveness were all values behind the Canadian invention of one of today's most popular sports, five-pin bowling. Bowling has always been a popular sport throughout history, but making bowling accessible to all was another matter. At the turn of the 20th century, Tommy Ryan ran Canada's first regulation 10-pin bowling club. Despite its enormous popularity, however, 10-pin bowling was a very difficult sport for most people. After many experiments, alterations, and false starts, five-pin bowling gradually came to life. This is why the sport has no official start date, but rather evolved into life between 1908 and 1912 and became so popular that by the middle of the century, it was Canada's fastest growing sport that is today played by a complete range of people, from young children to seniors. Similarly, the sport of ringette was also invented to make sport more inclusive. Sam Jacks, the Director of Parks and Recreation in North Bay, Ontario, was concerned that women rarely had the chance to play winter team games. They had to largely skate around the edge of lakes or ice rinks while the men played hockey. It was important for Jacques that his invented sport emphasized healthy competition and that the rules enabled maximum participation for all of the 16 members. Therefore, the game was structured to be wide open and dynamic so that success depended on skating skill and agility. The first ringette game was played in Espanola in Northern Ontario in the winter of 1963 and caught on so quickly that by 1969, the first provincial ringette association was established in Ontario. Emphasizing the inclusive nature of the sport, today ringette is played by over 30,000 Canadians. One Canadian sport that was invented for people with limited use of their arms and hands to enjoy the speed and physical intensity of competition was wheelchair rugby. Combining aspects of basketball, rugby, and handball, players use wheelchairs that are designed to tackle and block their opponents while also strategically cooperating to carry the ball over the opponent's goal line. Following Canada's first Canadian National Wheelchair Rugby Championship in 1979, the sport's international profile grew rapidly, becoming a full medal Paralympic event in 2000, with Canada always at the forefront. In the 2008 Paralympic Games in Beijing, Canada won the bronze medal, which improved to the silver medal 4 years later in London, and then finally gold at the 2015 Para-Pan American Games on home soil in Toronto. Since then, the game's hard-hitting action has redefined wheelchair sports, thrilling spectators all around the world.